The line outside the White House gate moved slowly,
We're almost
and my
in,
brother
Madam
Grant
Ambassador.
used every
Let's
extra
hope
second
we are
of it
not
to
too
make sure I
late.
felt small. "You're not getting in," he said, adjusting his tie, glancing at the other guests around us like he needed an audience to enjoy this properly. "This is a state dinner, not a company picnic. People who actually matter are inside that building. You should have stayed home." I stood there in the navy dress I'd bought for the occasion, hands cold despite the summer air, and said nothing. Grant had spent our entire childhood convinced that importance was something you could see from the outside, measured in titles and handshakes and rooms you were allowed to walk into. He never once considered that some of us simply chose not to explain ourselves. If you've ever had someone from your own family look right through you like you were invisible, in front of strangers, just to feel bigger themselves, you already know the exact shape of the egg I was carrying that night, and I promise, the next few minutes at that door are going to change everything you think you know about quiet people. Grant had been invited as a rising executive from a firm doing overseas infrastructure contracts, the kind of young man who collected connections like other people collect stamps. He had mentioned this dinner for 3 straight months at every family gathering, made sure our parents knew, made sure I knew, and when I quietly asked if I could come as his guest, he laughed and said, "Sure, if you want to stand outside and watch." I came anyway, not as his guest, though he never bothered to ask why I hadn't needed him to arrange anything. We reached the entrance together, and the hostess, a composed young woman with a tablet and an earpiece, glanced at Grant's invitation first, since he stepped forward like he already owned the moment. "Name?" she asked. "Grant Whitfield, +1. She scanned the list, nodded, then looked at me for confirmation, the way hostesses do when they're simply closing a formality and you are. She asked. I gave her my name. Her eyes moved down the screen, and something shifted in her posture, a stillness that hadn't been there a second before. She looked up at me again, this time slower, more careful. "Ambassador Whitfield," she asked quietly, as if she needed to hear it confirmed out loud before she could fully believe it. Grant's smile faltered for the first time all evening. "I'm sorry, what did you just call her?" The hostess didn't answer him. She turned instead, apologizing for the delay, explaining that my seating had been arranged separately, at the head table, per direct request from the secretary's office, since I would be joining the delegation briefing, scheduled for after dinner regarding the trade negotiations. I had spent the last 4 years quietly shaping from behind closed doors, in rooms Grant had never once been invited into, doing work that never made headlines because that was never the point of it. Grant stood frozen at the threshold, his invitation suddenly feeling very small in his hand. "You're an ambassador?" he asked, the mockery completely drained from his voice, replaced with something closer to disbelief. "I was appointed 18 months ago, I said gently. "I didn't mention it because you never asked what I actually did for a living. You just assumed, the same way you always have. Since we were kids." I wasn't trying to humiliate him back, though I understood, watching his face, that the moment did exactly that on its own, without any help from me. Sometimes the truth doesn't need cruelty attached to it. It only needs to finally be spoken. Inside, as the evening unfolded, Grant sat 2 tables away from where I was seated, watching quietly as senior officials greeted me by name, as conversations unfolded around policy decisions he had only ever read about in industry newsletters. He didn't approach me again until much later, after dessert. After the noise of the room had softened into low conversation and clinking glasses, he sat down across from me, uninvited but hesitant, like a much younger version of himself. "I've spent our whole lives thinking I was the one who made it," he said quietly. "I never once considered that maybe you just didn't need anyone to know." I told him the truth, the same truth I'd carried for years without resentment. "I never needed you to see me, Grant. I just wish you had wanted to, before tonight forced you to." He apologized, really apologized, in a way he never had before, and something between us loosened that night that had been tight since childhood. We talk differently now. He asks questions instead of assuming answers, and I've noticed he's stopped needing every room to know his name before he feels comfortable walking into it. I think about that night sometimes, not because I needed the vindication,